This is Rebel Therapist, a podcast for entrepreneurs who are trained as therapists and who want to level up their businesses, make a bigger impact, feel fulfilled, and be very well paid. I'm your host, Annie Schusler. Before I jump in, I want to tell you that Create Your Program just opened registration, and registration is going to be closing on January 11th. So if you're thinking about it, head over to rebeltherapist.me/create. That's my 8-week program to help you create your signature program. All right, let's get into it. I got this great question. How do I find the time to build a program when I have a full caseload? And I'm going to read you the actual question. I'm going to keep this person anonymous, but I will call her Susan in honor of my favorite actor, Susan Sarandon, who, from what I hear, has really good boundaries. Susan says, I pretty much constantly have a full caseload. I know staying full and seeing this many people is burning me out. How do I find time to build a program with a full caseload? I'm really struggling on how to shift slowly out of private practice and into something more sustainable for my own mental health while also being financially stable. I love my clients, but it's exhausting and I hate telling people no, but I'm maxed out and turning multiple people away every week. I can't even recommend them to someone else because all of my trusted colleagues are in the same boat, maxed out and overwhelmed. I've spent the last couple of weeks setting schedule boundaries of when I am and am not seeing clients. All right, Susan. First of all, what I want to say is this is your one and only life, and working the schedule and working in the way that you truly want to work is worth it. If someone needs to be disappointed, you or your clients or your potential clients, if someone needs to be disappointed in your schedule and what you have available, it can't be you. Long term, it can't be you because this is, like you're saying, a recipe for burnout. So staying on this road, from what you're saying, staying on this road is not okay for you long term. I really want to send a love letter to my former self about this situation and say, create the schedule you really need, set the hard boundaries, don't wait until that feels comfortable, and then keep those boundaries, even though that part is even harder. And it is so worth it because it's going to allow you to breathe more fully. I noticed that a lot of people, and this was absolutely me, a lot of people feel like I should be able to do this. I should be able to do all of this and all of that because I see someone else doing it. And the thing is, it doesn't matter what someone else's capacity is. One of the secrets that I uncovered when I started my podcast, where I used to just interview people in private practice, I discovered that when I started asking everyone, how many clients can you comfortably see in a week? That number was way lower than I thought it was. I thought it was just me who couldn't really thrive and see 20 clients a week. And then I discovered that it's incredibly common for therapists to need to see less people in order to thrive. And it doesn't even matter what someone else's capacity is. We're looking at your capacity. So whatever it means to you to have a full caseload, it is burning you out. Okay. The next thing I want to say is ask yourself what your motivation is to create a program beyond private practice. Why do you want to do this? And is it a good enough reason for you? As a therapist, sometimes you're sitting with a person who you know needs to make a change and that they're avoiding making that change. So perhaps you're sitting with someone who is talking about potentially leaving a relationship and you've been talking about it for a really long time and you kind of know in your bones that there is no work that the two of you can do that's going to make their relationship work. They have tried everything that they can try. They are stuck and they need to leave this relationship. And it's not your place to tell them to do that, but you know in your bones, this is a person who needs to make a change. There is no reworking around this issue that is going to make this sustainable for them. Or maybe you're sitting with a client who is in a job that they clearly need to leave. There's something going on in that workplace that it really can't be fixed, and you know that. So I want you to look at yourself and ask yourself, is that you right now? Is this a change that you actually need to make? Is it time to do this and you're putting off the inevitable? Or are there some adjustments that you could make so that your private practice can really work for you with some smaller changes? If your situation is that it's absolutely time to make some changes, to develop a new program, a new way of working, be honest with yourself about that. I personally put off that decision and kept on trying to make adjustments. And I personally, for me, I wish I had made this move a lot faster. So evaluate your reason for wanting to do this, and how important is it that you get moving on this now? And just be super honest with yourself about that reality. Now, if you know, yes, this is absolutely something that I want to do and I love my reasons for wanting to do it, evaluate your capacity. Do you have the capacity for this project? And if you don't have the capacity, how can you create some? So what I mean by capacity is time, money, people who can support you, people who can love you, tech skills, ability to connect with people, expertise in your niche, energy. These are all different kinds of capacity. So ask yourself, do you have the capacity to take on this project? And if not, how can you create the capacity for it? So some ways that people create capacity for themselves are hiring a business coach, asking for more help from their spouse or their best friends, identifying what they can start doing badly for a period of time, what in their lives they're giving energy or time to that they could at least temporarily stop doing or start doing badly. What could they at least temporarily say no to? What kinds of activities increase your energy? And how could you do more of those things, at least for a period of time? And is there time or money or energy available that you've been afraid to put into this project that you could choose to put into it and to really bet on yourself in this way? Now, Tara McMullen, the author, gave us a really good reframe. When you're thinking about your capacity, don't ask yourself, could I squeeze this in? But ask yourself, do I have the capacity to do this at the level I want to do it at? And I think that's a great reframe to help us say no to more things rather than squeeze in more things. And so really ask yourself about this project of creating a program beyond private practice. Do you have the capacity to do it, or could you create the capacity to do it? Now, I have found for me that sometimes I have the capacity to do something I didn't know I had the capacity to do. And sometimes that capacity shows up when I realize how much I want something. I didn't know I had the capacity to care for 75 houseplants. So before 2020, I wasn't doing a good job with my 5 houseplants. They were not thriving. They were not living their full lives. And then when COVID and lockdown hit, I started really craving having indoor plants and having like a haven that was filled with plants. And I started finding the time and the energy to, for example, watch tons of YouTube videos about plant care, to start cuttings and to spend a lot of time with my plants. And now I've, grown to have about 75 houseplants, and I've hit my limit. My apartment has hit its limit, and I really adore them, and they give back to me. I have one room that has 24 houseplants in it, and it's heaven. But I had to find that capacity kind of in the edges of my life. I also want to encourage you to look at this as a 2 big step process. The first is carving out time and energy and capacity for a project, which means creating the program and launching the program. And then there's carving out time and energy for the ongoing workflows or the ongoing practices that you need to do in order to keep building that business and keep running that business. So creating and launching a pilot program is a project. It's got a beginning, middle, and end. And you know when you have completed that project. And I find that project can be done in about 8 weeks. And that's why I made my program, Create Your Program, 8 weeks long, so I can guide you through every step of that process in real time. And then running your program over and over again and growing that business is an ongoing set of practices or an ongoing set of workflows. So the first thing is finding the time and the energy and the overall capacity for that project, which will probably take you about 2 months if you really dedicate yourself to it. And then there's making space for the ongoing practices and the ongoing workflows. So I noticed that people who sign up for Create Your Program have decided that they can find the money and the time and the energy and the support for that 8-week process. A lot of that support comes from me and from CYP. And they're able to get that first project done. And it is a big one, niching, creating their pilot and launching that pilot, partly because they have the structure and the step-by-step instructions and the accountability. And partly because they've bet on themselves and they've invested in themselves and in this project, and they want to make sure they follow through on that. They do not want to waste that money. They do not want to waste that opportunity. And they signed up because it matters to them. And then there's the ongoing workflows after they've created and launched their programs. And each person then has to decide what pace they're going to move forward with. And some folks keep moving at a fast pace and they increase how much time they're giving to the process, maybe all the way up to 10 or 15 or 20 hours a week going into this new business. And other folks dedicate more like 3 to 5 hours a week to grow that business a little bit more slowly but steadily. And I think both of those are absolutely beautiful. Now, Susan, you mentioned in your question that you're in a position where there's risk here. This private practice is really paying the bills, and you need to be, as you put it, financially stable. And so if you're in that position, which a lot of folks are in, of course, there are ways to kind of mitigate that time and money risk by starting in less risky ways. So one of those ways, for example, is to start with a really viable niche, to examine your niche, make sure you get some support in strategizing around your niche to make sure that it's a very likely viable niche, that you're selling your program to people who are really looking to buy a program. Another thing you can do to make this less risky is to start with a pilot that's a structured one-on-one program rather than a group program, because a one-on-one program is always going to be easier to sell. And if cash flow is an issue, and if it would not be good for you to be in the position where you potentially didn't sell your program out the first time, you can mitigate that risk by starting with a structured one-on-one program. And there are a lot of other decisions that you can make to lower your risk in this transition. So throughout Create Your Program, I point out the decisions that people are making and when there's an opportunity to make a riskier decision or a less risky decision, and how to think each of those through for yourself. Another thing I want you to think about here in terms of carving out the time, carving out the energy for yourself is notice what has worked for you in the past when you're doing something hard. What kind of accountability works for you? What kind of motivation works for you? And what kinds of practices really work for you to get difficult things done? So I'm motivated by deadlines. Time blocking really helps me. I'm motivated by outer accountability and by inner accountability. And I have a tendency to overschedule myself or to give myself unrealistic deadlines. And if I do that, then I'm going to get myself into a bad cycle. Now, other folks have different strengths and different motivators and different pitfalls. So analyze yourself. What has worked for you in the past? What are some of your best practices for getting things done that are challenging but worth it? One thing I have everybody who I work with do is take the Gretchen Rubin quiz. at gretchenrubin.com/quiz. It's just one way to explore how you best stay motivated and work through things that you really care about. Okay, so now that we've talked about some ways to think about this issue, I want to give you a few tangible tips that I hear working for a lot of people who I work with and a lot of my colleagues. So one of them I mentioned is blocking out time every week. And what some people do is have a time block to work on this project that's plan A, and then another one that's plan B, so that if anything happens to mess up their plan A time block, they have plan B there. Another is to dedicate one full workday a week to this business and not let anything else in. Another is to block out a few days every month. So instead of weekly time blocks, some folks can't do that, but they can block out a few days every month. Another is to group your tasks so you're doing a bunch of admin stuff at once. You're answering emails all at once. Along with that, it can be really helpful to just answer your voicemail once or twice a day and answer email once or twice a day so that you're not switching tasks quite as often. Another really quick win would be to limit your social media time. And another thing is, as you're creating this next business, keep your tech very simple. In Create Your Program, we recommend a few simple platforms that you can use so that you're not spending all of your time in tech wormholes, because those can be very time consuming. And then we bring in a tech expert to answer your questions and help you through stuck places with tech. Now, around your private practice, Susan, you've already been taking a lot of steps around your schedule and setting boundaries. When something comes up in your private practice that starts to intrude on your new boundaries, have a policy for yourself ready. Have it ready ahead of time and practice holding that boundary with yourself in particular, and then also with whoever is needing something from you that's falling outside that boundary. So for example, if there's someone who really needs to see you at a time that no longer works for you, that would be practicing telling them that that time is not available. And if there's someone who you're already seeing at a time that just really won't work for you anymore, that might mean giving them notice that if you're not able to switch their time, you're not going to be able to work with them past a certain date. And I know some of you, maybe you, Susan, are yelling at your phone right now. Like, I can't do that. I cannot. They can't do any other time. I can't abandon this client. And I just want to say, being a therapist should not be a hostage situation. You can, I strongly believe, give people notice and make a loving and thoughtful handoff if that's what you need to do for you. Another thing that some folks have done is start a therapy group for folks in a niche that they're really passionate about and they don't want to say no to when they don't have any more one-on-one sessions available. Another very quick win is, if you haven't already, create an email auto response and update it to answer any frequent questions that are coming up so that you're not emailing back and forth as much. And you're setting expectations about, this is how long it's going to take for me to get back to you. This is what's likely to happen. And now brainstorm more ways that you can streamline your private practice. Try to come up with 50 ideas of ways that you could streamline your private practice, and let yourself come up with silly ideas that when you first look at them, they seem ridiculous. All right, finally, I want to say, Susan, that starting a signature program and growing it to the point where you make all of your income or a lot of your income from it is not easy. There are challenging parts. And being an entrepreneur is not easy. And I will never lie about that and say, hey, this is going to be so quick and easy. And if you're in something that is not working for you, that is hard too. It's just a different kind of hard. And remember, we were talking earlier about you sometimes sit with people who you know are stuck and you know that it is time for them to make a change. And look at yourself with those eyes and just be really honest about what steps you need to take. So both things are hard. Creating something new is hard. And if it isn't working for you, continuing what you're doing now is also really hard. So it's really a different kind of hard. So it's about choosing which hard you're going to lean into. Now, the hard I would never want for you is figuring out how to create your business beyond private practice by yourself. I didn't do that. I could never have done that. I got coaching. I still get coaching. And I have entrepreneur friends who support me and allow me to get vulnerable, get their help. Karen Smiley, Podge Thomas, Ali Shapiro, Annie Wright, Tiffany McLean. Those are just a few. So Susan, just to remind you of the things that I want you to think about is 1, get really clear on your why, evaluate your capacity. And if you don't have the capacity at the moment, look at how you can create more. Then look at this in 2 big parts. You've got a short-term project of creating this program and launching it. And then you have a long-term set of workflows. Look at starting this in less risky ways so that you can hold on to your financial stability. Lean into your motivation and accountability style. Know what works for you. And then finally, choose the hard that you want to lean into. All right. And Susan, I am so grateful to you for asking this question. I know so many people have this question. Create Your Program just opened registration, and it'll only be open for a week. Registration closes on January 11th or when the program fills, whichever happens first. So it has closed before that registration deadline the last couple times. So please head over to rebeltherapist.me/create to check out more about it and register. Okay, thank you so much for listening. And thank you, Cosmo Palms, for editing this podcast. I'll be back next time.